Daniel chapter 5. The writing on the wall. King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles, with whom he drank. Under the influence of the wine, he ordered the gold and silver vessels which Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem to be brought in, so that the king, his nobles, his consorts, and his concubines might drink from them. When the gold vessels taken from the temple had been brought in, and while the king was drinking wine from them, they praised their gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone. Suddenly, opposite the lampstand, the fingers of a human hand appeared, writing on the plaster of the wall in the king's palace. When the king saw the hand that wrote, his face became pale, his thoughts terrified him. The king shouted for the enchanters, Chaldeans, and diviners to be brought in. "Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means shall be clothed in purple, wear a chain of gold around his neck, and be third in governing the kingdom." But though all the king's wise men came in, none of them could either read the writing or tell the king what it meant. Then King Belshazzar was greatly terrified. His face became pale, and his nobles were thrown into confusion. When the queen heard of the discussion between the king and his nobles, she entered the banquet hall and said, "Do not let your thoughts terrify you, or your face become so pale. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is a spirit of the holy gods. During the lifetime of your father, he showed brilliant insight and godlike wisdom. Because this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar, has shown an extraordinary spirit, knowledge, and insight in interpreting dreams, let him now be summoned to tell you what this means." Then Daniel was brought into the presence of the king. "I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, that you have shown brilliant insight and extraordinary wisdom. The wise men and enchanters were brought in to me to read this writing and tell me what its meaning is, but they could not say what the words meant. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now, if you are able to read the writing and tell me what it means, you shall be clothed in purple, wear a chain of gold around your neck, and be third in governing the kingdom." Daniel answered the king, "You may keep your gifts, or give your presents to someone else, but the writing I will read for the king and tell what it means. The Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar kingship, greatness, splendor, and majesty. Because he made him so great, the nations and peoples of every language dreaded and feared him. Whomever he willed, he would kill or let live. Whomever he willed, he would exalt or humble. But when his heart became proud and his spirit hardened by insolence, he was put down from his royal throne and deprived of his glory. His body was bathed with the dew of heaven until he learned that the Most High God is sovereign over human kingship. You, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this. You have rebelled against the Lord of heaven. You had the vessels of his temple brought before you, so that you and your nobles, consorts, and concubines might drink wine from them. And you praised the gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone, that neither see nor hear nor have intelligence. But the God in whose hands is your very breath, and the whole course of your life, you did not glorify. By him was the hand sent, and the writing set down. This is the writing that was inscribed: Mene, Tekel, and Perez. These words mean, Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to it. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then by order of Belshazzar, they clothed Daniel in purple with a chain of gold around his neck and proclaimed him third in governing the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar the Chaldean king was slain. Daniel chapter 6. And Darius the Mede succeeded to the kingdom at the age of 62. The lion's den. Darius decided to appoint over his entire kingdom 120 satraps. These were accountable to 3 ministers, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps reported to them so that the king should suffer no loss. Daniel outshone all the ministers and satraps because an extraordinary spirit was in him, and the king considered setting him over the entire kingdom. Then the ministers and satraps tried to find grounds for accusation against Daniel regarding the kingdom, but they could not accuse him of any corruption, because he was trustworthy. No fault or corruption was to be found in him. Then these men said to themselves, "We shall find no grounds for accusation against this Daniel, except in connection with the law of his God." So these ministers and satraps stormed into the king and said to him, "King Darius, live forever! All the ministers of the kingdom, prefects, satraps, counselors, and governors agree that the following prohibition ought to be put in force by royal decree. For 30 days, whoever makes a petition to anyone, divine or human, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into a den of lions. Now, O king, let the prohibition be issued over your signature, immutable and irrevocable, according to the law of the Medes and Persians. So King Darius signed the prohibition into law. Even after Daniel heard that this law had been signed, he continued his custom of going home to kneel in prayer and give thanks to his God in the upper chamber 3 times a day. So these men stormed in and found Daniel praying and pleading before his God. Then they went to remind the king about the prohibition. "Did you not sign a decree, O king, that for 30 days whoever makes a petition to anyone, divine or human except to you, O king, shall be cast into a den of lions?" The king answered them, "The decree is absolute, irrevocable, under the law of the Medes and Persians." To this they replied, "Daniel, one of the Jewish exiles, has paid no attention to you, O king, or to the prohibition you signed. 3 times a day he offers his prayer." The king was deeply grieved at this news, and he made up his mind to save Daniel. He worked till sunset to rescue him. But these men pressed the king. "Keep in mind, O king," they said, "that under the law of the Medes and Persians, every royal prohibition or decree is irrevocable." So the king ordered Daniel to be brought and cast into the lion's den. To Daniel he said, "Your God, whom you serve so constantly, must save you." To forestall any tampering, the king sealed with his own ring and the rings of the lords the stone that had been brought to block the opening of the den. Then the king returned to his palace for the night. He refused to eat, and he dismissed the entertainers. Since sleep was impossible for him, the king rose very early the next morning and hastened to the lion's den. As he drew near, he cried out to Daniel sorrowfully, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve so constantly, been able to save you from the lions?" Daniel answered the king, "O king, my God has sent his angel, and closed the lions' mouths, so that they have not hurt me. For I have been found innocent before him. Neither have I done you any harm, O king." This gave the king great joy. At his order, Daniel was brought up from the den. He was found to be unharmed because he trusted in his God. The king then ordered the men who had accused Daniel, along with their children and their wives, to be cast into the lion's den. Before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to the nations and peoples of every language, wherever they dwell on the earth, "May your peace abound. I decree that throughout my royal domain the God of Daniel is to be reverenced and feared. For he is the living God, enduring forever, whose kingdom shall not be destroyed, whose dominion shall be without end, a Savior and Deliverer, working signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who saved Daniel from the lion's power." So Daniel fared well during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian.